All right, so today we have three fantastic researchers from the Chamberlain Lab at Texas A&M University here to educate us on black soldier flies. I'll introduce each of them real quick before we get started. Go ahead and turn off the light. James Riggs is here up on the screen right now, is a PhD student in the Chamberlain Lab. He worked for several years in factory industry and as a state park ranger in his home state of South Carolina before returning to further his education. He is studying black soldier flies, namely applications where the flies can be used locally and beyond, and is especially investigating life-extending storage approaches to further their transport and rearing potential. And James's grandfather was also a master gardener in South Carolina. So yeah, we also have Pooja Sharma, and there she is. Hi, Pooja. She is also a PhD student in the Chamberlain Lab. She is originally from India and is studying black soldier flies. Her work integrates waste bioconversion, environmental remediation, and sustainable agriculture by using black soldier fly larvae. And finally, our third presenter is Dr. Ezra Bailey. She is a postdoctoral researcher in the Chamberlain Lab. She studies the natural history and relationships of flies using DNA in order to understand their evolution for applications in conservation and management. She primarily studies flies that are parasitic or decomposers, such as bot flies and blowflies. So, hi, Dr. Bailey. Thank you for being here. So we're going to let them present and hold all of our questions until we are finished. And I think James is going to start us off here.
Yes, hello, everyone. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Let me share this presentation with you. Okay, awesome. So thank you guys for inviting us and for your warm welcome. We're very excited to get to present to you about black soldier flies in general, and then later about our research as well. So without further ado, I'm going to begin presenting about our friendly neighborhood black soldier fly, which are important as waste reducers and protein, fertilizer, and fuel producers. So a little bit about myself. As was mentioned, I'm from South Carolina. I got my degree in biology at the College of Charleston. And before coming here, I was a park ranger for the state parks of South Carolina. And also, here's a picture of me with my grandfather, who was a part of my hometown Master Gardeners. And the main focus that the Master Gardeners there do is we have a public park known as Swan Lake and Iris Gardens. It's the only public park in the country with every species of swan. And we also have the longest running continuous festival every year for the state of South Carolina, known as the Iris Festival, which is timed with the blooming of the Japanese irises. But we're here to talk about black soldier fly. Dr. Bailey will go a little more in depth with this, but I just want to give a quick overview of identifying what is a black soldier fly. So here in the middle, I have two pictures of the black soldier fly. At the top left, we have the typical fly body. As you notice, they're a lot more circular in their overall shape, whereas the black soldier fly is more elongate. Also, the typical fly has very reduced antennae, whereas the black soldier fly, they are very noticeable and long. To the right, I have a silhouette of a typical wasp body, and you'll notice there's a lot of similarities between the black soldier fly and the wasp body. So black soldier fly is a true fly. They don't possess stingers of any sort. They cannot bite you, but looking like this can definitely prevent certain predation if something thinks, oh, that might be a wasp. I don't want to mess with that. So there's an evolutionary advantage for them to look like a wasp. The name for black soldier fly, the scientific name is Hermetia illucens. It gets that name illucens from, if you look at the picture where you're seeing the underside of the black soldier fly, you can see that whitish area. That area is clear, so you can see through it. We get elucidate and like lumens for light from that same root word of illucens. And this helps the appearance to look like it has a narrowed waist, just like wasps have. The black soldier fly is found throughout the world, in part from us humans using them, but also they are just built to be around these tropical and temperate regions because they eat a lot of decomposing matter, especially plants, and that can be found in all of these areas as well. You'll notice Texas, except for the little hat of Texas, is fully filled, so they are native to this area. Hence why some of you have already noticed that you have found them in your own compost bins. So the life cycle of the black soldier fly is the same as many other insects, such as the butterfly. There's the egg, the larva, pupa, and adult. For the black soldier fly, it spends the majority of that life cycle as the larva. Part of what makes the black soldier fly so amazing for us is not only what they can do, but what they don't do. So as adults, they are mostly non-feeding. So unlike a lot of other flies, they're not going to be attracted to your burger. They're not going to be attracted to waste to feed on their own. They're going to be attracted to your compost pile to lay their eggs so the next generation can feed up. And so here's a picture of what the black soldier fly looks like when they first hatch out of the eggs. We call these neonates. They're very tiny. Most people cannot see them very easily with the naked eye. This is a zoom up just to show you how cute they are. But the main part that you will normally see are the adult or these larger larvae. So I have a cartoon hand here for size comparison. So they are relatively large, especially as the larva. They get much larger than most fly species will. And you'll notice here there's multiple colors. So as they're about to pupate, they'll darken into this black color. So in this picture, about half of them have begun that final molt where they're now pupating, and the other ones are still in that pre-pupal stage. And something that's really impressive with that stage is and this is common with many groups of flies, not just the black soldier fly, but after they have determined that they've fed up as much as they need to in order to be able to finish their life cycle, they have a natural tendency to leave the area where they've been eating to find a new place in order to pupate safely. And here in this picture, this is someone's farm where they have their bin for their food waste, and they a couple years ago put some black soldier fly larvae in there. They have not had to put any more since then. And as they leave, they go up through this gutter like a ramp and fall down, and the chickens are able to eat them. So it's an automatic feeder. No, the action of movement is done by the flies. So the big four for what we use black soldier fly for as humans, not just in our lab in particular. The first is waste management. So in this picture here, the example given is for food waste specifically, but we've tested so many things in our lab. Pretty much if it's an organic waste, they will eat it. So they reduce that waste, so that's less waste to give off smells, less waste to be feeding potential pest species of flies or other creatures. So that's a benefit there. Then afterwards, you have all of these larvae, and you can use them for things. So depending on what you fed them, you can use them as animal feed, and this is being done already. Someone from our lab that graduated is now working for Tyson to help them grow black soldier fly to feed to their chickens. Also, they're very high in fats, and you can make biodiesel from them as well. And then in a little bit, Pooja will talk to you more about the fourth, which is using their frass or the leftover waste after the black soldier flies have fed, and how you can use that to amend soils and as a fertilizer. So why is this important? I just have a quick example here. A few years ago, a study in Kenya trained almost 1,300 farmers on how to rear black soldier fly. Afterwards, about a quarter of them continued to do so. And from that, 37 went commercial with their growing, and collectively, those 37 produce about 3 metric tons of black soldier fly per week. And this is just from one study in Kenya. Why is it important for you? So the black soldier fly, as I've said, and as you guys have said, you found it in your compost pile. So it's a free helper that has come to help you break down your waste and turn that waste into something that you can use. And so now I'll turn it over to Pooja, and she'll go more in depth about the frass uses of black soldier fly.
Hello everyone, once again. So I'm Pooja. I'm second year PhD student in Dr. Tombalin lab. So today I'm gonna talk about black soldier fly larval frass as an organic fertilizer. So this is me working in lab, set up my experiment, enjoying Darwin Day, collecting insect for my coursework, set up plant experiment, and look at our cute BSF while I was preparing for feed for its larvae. So black soldier fly larval frass is an organic byproduct produced by black soldier fly larvae, and it contains nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and different macro and micronutrients. Those are beneficial for plant health and soil health. Here are some key features of black soldier fly larvae frass. So first, it rebuilds soil life by introducing different beneficial microorganisms that plays important role in soil health and soil fertility. Second, it boosts plant physiology by absorbing nutrients and improve metabolic process of plant growth. Third, it also enhances water and nutrient uptake. By applying frass, a plant can better absorb nutrient. Next is it also plays important role in circular and sustainable agriculture. And finally, it plays an important role in disease suppressions. For example, by applying frass, it is also helpful in like fusarium wilt and bacterial wilt in tomatoes, damping off in lettuce, nematode damage in potatoes, and root wilt disease in peppers. So why it is important for us? So black soldier fly larval frass can increase crop yield approximately 15 to 25%. It is also reduce our reliance on chemical fertilizer by approximately 30 to 50%. It improves soil fertility and microbial diversity. Also, it is ideal for vegetable, ornamental, etc. Here is a quick comparison why farmer choose frass. So here is a comparison between synthetic fertilizers, other organic fertilizer, and black soldier fly larval frass. So synthetic fertilizer include nitrogen, phosphorus, potassiums, but they often lacks micronutrients and can cause leaching and runoff risk in environment. For other organic fertilizer, yeah, absolutely, they have macro and micronutrients with varying bioavailability, but it is not always sterilized. In contrast, for black soldier fly larval frass, it includes macro and micronutrients with beneficial microbes. It is also odorless and it can be produced as a pathogen-free. So basically, it is an ideal fertilizer for plant growth. So now the question is how much frass we should use for our plants. So I did a experiment on basil, and it is also like depends on the plant species and growing conditions. So during my experiment, I applied different amount of frass on basils, such as like 10%, 25%, 40%, and 55%. And I found that 10% frass works well than commercial fertilizer. Another example is here, tomato. So multiple studies have shown that 40% frass works well than commercial fertilizer. One more example is here, lettuce. So 40% frass is also perform better than commercial fertilizer. So this is, so basically we can say this is a promising and sustainable fertilizer for agriculture. So overall, black soldier fly is one of the beneficial fly that plays important role in waste conversion, environmental remediation, and sustainable agriculture. But there are many more other fly species that are helpful in ecosystem like pollination, biocontrol, and decomposition. So now I would like to hand over to Dr. Bailey, who will discuss other beneficial flies and their roles.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pooja. Excellent work to both of you. And thank you again for the warm welcome and for having us here today to talk about some really exciting research that we're very pleased to get to share. My name is Dr. Ezra Bailey. I finished my graduate studies over at North Carolina State University just last year. Very excited to be at Texas A&M with the awesome Tomberlin Lab and all these really awesome students to get to do some ecological research. Talking a little bit about black soldier fly specifically, James introduced this at the beginning of our presentation, but just to recap a little bit and go a little bit further, as well as talk about the diversity of other decomposing flies, we have Hermetia illucens, and again, that name coming from those little clear patches on the abdomen that make it look much like a wasp. Hermetia illucens, the black soldier fly, is part of the family Stratiomyidae. These are the soldier flies, which are a type of true fly. True fly meaning that they only have two wings. Those hind two wings that most insects have been reduced to these little nubs that they use really just as gyroscopic balancing, and it makes them much better flyers and why they're so hard to swat when they get into your house. Now, we talk a lot about Hermetia illucens, but there's actually a ton of stratiomyids throughout all over the world. There's about 3,000 species described thus far, and I do a lot of work in taxonomy, and we know there are a ton of insects left to describe. Right now, we have about 1.2 million, give or take a few, insects described globally. Rough estimates are that there's probably about 10 million total, but of course it's very hard to estimate. That's somewhere where we're sitting. So there's probably actually far more species than 3,000 that we're seeing here. The soldier flies have tons of diversity in morphology, their appearance, as well as ecological value. They engage in a wide number of ecological niches, different life histories, but in my opinion, the morphology and that diversity is really beautiful. So just a few examples of some of the really gorgeous soldier flies that you might be able to find. We have a Stratomyidae up on the top left, a Dontomya on the top right. These can be found in Texas. Decranophora on the bottom left, looking more like a spider really than a true fly, and Artemida on the bottom right. A lot of these soldier flies have a few features in common that are really helpful for identification, whether it's black soldier fly or one of its relatives that you find in your garden, aiding your compost and keeping everything nice and clean in the forest. But you might notice that in all of these, the antennae, just like James had said, are pretty distinct. Unlike most flies, which have relatively quite short antennae, unless they're some of the very old kind of original flies, like crane flies and mosquitoes, they usually have quite short antennae, and they're not normally this thick, but we do see that in the soldier flies. They are quite noticeable. It's a good site identification characteristic. So, tons of diversity and ecological value. I will say that the majority of soldier flies, like we've talked about, are really important decomposers. And the name soldier fly, you might be thinking, we keep saying it, where does that come from? They don't particularly look soldier-like. The name comes from the original taxonomists who were describing it, found that at the time, those mix of like stripes on their bodies, especially with like a Dontomya that you saw on the last slide, kind of uniform like patterns. There's a few spines on them that kind of look like medallions, and their walking behavior as well, all contributed to that name. Stratiomyids, the soldier flies, tend to walk. They're actually not great flyers. We reared quite a few of them in our university, in our lab. We have a whole greenhouse to rear them, and they're quite easy actually to grab out of the air. They're very slow flyers. They tend to walk around more often than not, which did contribute to their name. Thinking about how we see a soldier fly, what is a soldier fly? How can you identify them? They're kind of tricky to identify at first glance because many of the soldier flies mimic bees and wasps. See that Dontomya with those kind of stripes on the abdomen, like I mentioned, Stratiomyice on the right. These are pretty good bee and wasp mimics, and there are some stronger ones out there as well, similar to the bee flies or the flower flies, also called the hover flies. Lots of good bee and wasp mimics in there, which at a first glance can be quite hard to tell apart. Two of the features that contribute to this mimicry, this Batesian mimicry, where they're not actually harmful, but they're gaining an advantage, less predation by mimicking something harmful, is that antennae shape that we mentioned. You can see it's either like a T or like a Y shape, which is a characteristic of the bees and wasps, where one of their diagnostic features is that bend in the antennae. They have bent antennae. So that helps contribute to that little costume they have going on. Additionally, like James said, the Stratiomyids, the soldier flies, often have kind of a fake wasp waist, which is a term used in a lot of fashion, but really does just mean, like at the bottom left, the different wasps and bees, almost everything from that order of insects has that narrowed waist. And the reason for that is because these bees and wasps, of course, have a stinger, and that is just a modified ovipositor, modified egg-laying device. And a lot of them are parasites, and it's a lot easier to parasitize something when you have a lot more flexibility in your abdomen. It's a lot easier than just laying on any garbage, any carry-on, any compost, when you have more flexibility. Because many of these insects are laying an egg on a sleeping beetle grub inside of a tree, like 5 inches deep. So that flexibility is very helpful. And they mimic that either with clear patches or with honestly kind of a shrunken waist, which is very interesting to see evolutionarily. Many soldier flies also decompose plant materials. So like we said, they're very important for the ecosystem function, keeping the ecosystem clean, especially around human areas where we do leave out a lot of compost, a lot of garbage, roadkill especially. Having something that can decompose those materials, more so plant here, but other fly families are just as important, is critical. Some of these larvae may also feed on products such as algae. They may feed on carrion, not as much as some of these other families, but still quite a few of them do, compost and manure. Additionally, many soldier flies are aquatic, and so these larvae have a specialized tube on their rear end that actually allows them to still get air continuously, even when they're in a pool of water of some sort. Like we said earlier, soldier flies are not a pest. They're nothing to worry about. Because they mimic wasps, it's easy to want to get them out of your gardens. Like kids don't get stung, dogs don't get stung, anything like that. But these flies cannot sting or bite. Like we said, they don't eat as adults. Their mouth parts are pretty sad, pretty sad sight to see. And again, they can only poorly fly. So they work great for rearing in a lab. It's very easy to deal with them, though it's amazing how long they've been around evolutionarily with how few defenses that they have. Additionally, they're not a vector of pathogens as far as we understand. More research needs to be done to confirm this, but as far as we can tell, unless it's mechanically transferring something, which any animal can, they're not something to worry about biologically. For identification, they are actually identifiable primarily by how their wings are held at rest. So you can see on the right, Hedriodiscus, the species, this whole genus, has, some of those like bright colors. It looks quite a bit like a bee or a wasp, has those bent antennae, but most importantly, this is a really nice example of how they hold their wings completely over one another. So very few flies are doing that. It's great to just quickly see and get an idea of probably what family you're seeing, and leave out some compost and just know that they'll be taking care of it. Soldier flies also usually have a pretty small head. The large eyes on Hermetia lucens is a bit deceptive. They actually do have quite a small head for a fly, to be honest with you. They have those Y or T-shaped antennae to make it look like a bend to mimic those bee and wasp antennae. And again, sometimes those transparent cells you can see, not sure if you can see my cursor, but right here on the abdomen, it's really incredible. So that part of the exoskeleton didn't melanize. No melanin was deposited. And so it's basically perfectly clear. It's really incredible evolutionarily that they're able to mimic that wasp waist so well. The black soldier fly, just going a little bit further, talking about some of my favorite bits about it, because it really is an incredible fly. It's really important ecologically for a number of reasons, one of which is that it breaks down really harmful bacteria. This is part of the research being conducted in the lab, especially with like E. coli, these really terrible human pathogens. Black soldier fly actually has the most AMPs, or antimicrobial peptides, of any insect that we have currently identified. It's able to produce more than anything else, with a whopping 57. And number 2 is at about 47, so it is quite a lead, actually. Additionally, this long-term storage, which James has talked about a little bit, and we'll talk more about with his research in just a moment, we suspect that ability comes from kind of like, we can store them because in nature, they might drop to the forest floor, and they're kind of waiting for fruit to drop. They're waiting for food to show up. So it is a very unique system, and James will talk some more about that. I don't want to steal his thunder, but it's a very cool system and is very helpful, again, for subsistence farmers, for large-scale industrial applications. It's really excellent. Just wanted to quickly foray into some other decomposer flies while we're on the subject, so that if you guys also see these in your gardens, in any natural spaces, you can get an idea of probably what you're looking for and what you can expect. So some other organic matter you might see, so including like compost specifically, garbage bins and waste, roadkill and other carrion, animal droppings or manure, and then finally plant decay. So real quick, talking a little about what you might see at compost in addition to black soldier fly, are forage flies. Many people have seen these before. They are very annoying to get rid of, called the scuttle flies because they do indeed scuttle around. These are very small flies, about 1 to 2 millimeters at max, often found also at compost bins, and again, beneficial but annoying if they get inside. As far as garbage, everyone's familiar with the housefly, of course. I do think these flies have a lot of diversity, morphology and ecology that most people aren't privy to yet, but they are, in most cases, found in garbage. As far as carrion, some flies that I work with that I love very much are the caliphorids or the blowflies. These are those shiny flies, blue and green, that you'll often find like at roadkill. They make up about 2/3 of the number total of individuals at any given carrion site. Of course, there's a lot of variety there, a lot of variability, but most of the time they are the predominant family that you're going to find at carrion. And in addition, the aptly named flesh fly, Sarcophagidae, also commonly found at carrion. And these are distinguished by kind of like a checkerboard pattern on their abdomen. At manure, you are still going to see a lot of houseflies, as well as dung flies. This is a very beautiful type of dung fly. The golden dung fly, very aptly named. Everyone was spot on naming these, but these are quite common in agricultural settings. And then finally, with plant decomposers, number one that you're probably going to see are the Drosophylids or the vinegar flies. So Drosophila melanogaster, using genetic research, is one of these Drosophylids, as the name suggests. And trying so hard to get people to call them vinegar flies because fruit flies are actually a different family. And so they're always mixed up all the time, but tell your friends these are the vinegar flies. So thank you very much for listening. We're going to talk a little bit about everyone's research now and how we can actually apply these systems and help solve real world problems. So over to James.
Thank you, guys. So we'll go in the same order we just presented in. So real quick, to go back with 2 pictures I showed you, we talked about these amazing uses we have for black soldier fly, and I showed you their life cycle. If you add up these estimated days for how long they are alive before they start dying of old age, it's from like 1 to 2 months typically. And because of that, when we are shipping them or transporting them around the globe, we are tied down to these methods that are very quick. So we're having to do air travel for far distances and trucks for that last mile. That's because we're locked in. We need high speed. And so because of this, we're having to pay more costs to get them where we want to go. What would be ideal for most transport methods is to do these cheaper but slower alternatives like boats for over the seas and then trains for long distance on land. These are more cost effective and cheaper overall, but it requires that we would not be locked into speed, which biologically we are locked in. We want the flies to get there not only before they die, but usually if you're doing the waste management part, you need them to spend the majority of their larval cycle wherever the waste needs to be consumed. Or if you're just trying to get them to start a new colony, even then you're still being limited by that short window of survival. And then further, the United States has officially declared that we're going to Mars. And so if we're doing things like that, already with the International Space Station, new methods have been unlocked to try to have as self-sustaining as possible, because every time you launch a rocket, that's a lot of zeros after the dollar sign. So if we're going to be sending black soldier fly, which I believe we should for all of these uses to help both lunar and Martian colonies to be able to be as self-sustaining as possible, being able to remediate their waste, being able to produce fuel so that they can refuel their rockets for return trips, etc., then we're going to need to unlock these methods. And so like Dr. Bailey mentioned, there's this innate ability within the black soldier fly that if we store them soon after they've hatched with very little feed in high densities, they will just stop growing and they also won't die. And so in that method, we've gotten them to consistently up to a month sit there as freshly hatched larvae. And then once we give them more food, then it's back to the races. And so now just that alone, they've gone from being 2 months of life to now 3 months of life. And during that 1 month, they didn't grow. And so we're now able to use them for the full maximum of waste management. And then eventually, once they grow up, one of those other streams that you can use the larvae for.
Hello once again. So my research is also focused on black soldier fly. So I'm looking for bioconversion efficiency of black soldier fly, post-frost application on plant growth, and soil microbial community analysis. So during this project, first phase of my project, I started with fish waste that contain radioactive material like cesium and mercury. I fed that fish waste to black soldier fly larvae to see how they bioconvert to the waste. Then in the second part of this project, I will harvest frass, and I will use this frass as a organic fertilizer to see how this frass influence the plant growth. In the third phase of my project, I will also look soil microbial communities, like how frost influences the beneficial bacteria that those are present in soil, and those are helpful for plant growth and soil health. So now I'm going to turn over to Dr. Bailey.
We're back on over to me, guys. Thank you all also for your patience as we go back and forth. It's great having so many folks wanting to present. I'm just going to real quick mention also what I work on because this is a lot on the screen. But I do a lot of taxonomy, systematics, phylogenetics, and genomics. Any way that I can understand the relationships and evolution of flies using DNA as well as morphology. So I do a lot of phylogenetics where we compare essentially just all the genetic code, all the DNA of as many species as possible to understand those relationships by understanding that DNA will mutate at a certain rate. And so over time, the more changes, the less likely they are to be related to one another. So this work, as you can see on the left side, between these two different colored columns, this yellow part right here, this portion, used to be its own family. But because it's coming out in the middle of this other separate family, we realized that there have just been some misdescriptions in how we've been thinking about the evolution of this family. And so that family is dead. So congratulations to all the students in insect diversity and universities. They have one less family to learn. But understanding the organization of this life is critical to our conservation, our management. One example in recent times is I also work on blowflies. Absolutely love them. And one really critical blowfly right now is, of course, the New World screwworm. So it's been all over the news. There's hundreds of millions of dollars of funding going to try to eradicate it again. It was eradicated in the United States about 60 years ago and is unfortunately making its way back up very quickly. However, if we want to be able to study it in the lab, it's very, very difficult to get an obligate parasite of vertebrates that must live on a living host in the lab to study it. So we want to use proxies. We want to use a closely related species that's as similar as possible genetically. But many labs have actually struggled with that because for a long time, we didn't know the relationships of these different members. And so people are using species that we now know are actually like 40 million years apart. They're actually very distinct. So when we understand the relationships of these species, when they diverge from one another, we can understand things like what are the best proxies to use in our laboratories. And additionally, we can compare their genomes and look for very specific traits. So things like a CRISPR and gene drive, all these really incredible technologies where we're going to try our very best to, remove the genes that allow these parasitic flies to even find a host. Well, we can we can stop them right in their tracks. And we can cease this, it's $9 billion just in Texas alone every year that screwworm is here. So being able to stop these really major pests in their tracks using really cutting edge technologies is relying on this foundational knowledge of how animals are related to one another. So just a little bit of that. I know there's a lot on the screen, but I just wanted to plug a little bit and say thank you all once again for your attention. This has been a ton of fun. And with that, this is a little bit about the flies facility. It's quite a large group. Some Photoshop faces in since me and some others recently joined. But want to thank you all once again and take any questions at this time.
Yes.
I'm wondering how they collect the frass.
So how do you collect the frass when you are doing your research?
Once we the black soldier fly larvae finish the feeding, that time we have sieve and we just use the sieve to collect frass.
Yeah, because they get so large,
Yeah.
when it's all said and done, the frass left over is a much smaller, almost sand-like. And so, like Pooja said, we can use that sieve to just separate them out. And then we have a bucket of frass and a bucket of larvae, and we can send them the two separate ways.
When she was talking about the percentage of frass as a fertilizer, the like 10% or 40%,
Yes.
she's talking about like by weight, by volume.
By weight or by volume in what container?
Yes,
Pooja?
it was by weight, but it depends on the like plant species what we are using. Generally for ornamental, like 1 to 5% frass by weight is recommended, because if we applied more frass, then it can cause stress for plants.
Okay. Yes.
I've watched a lot of scary movies where things get out of control. And I'm just wondering, you know, if we're really reliant on these black flies to help us, are there downsides if we get too many and they come to kill us all?
So the question is, are there any downsides to black soldier flies? Could they overpopulate and then become a problem, or anything like that? Because
Yes, that's a great question. So, as far as we can tell, there have not been negatives with, I'd say, one main exception. If you're in an area where they aren't native or they aren't found in high densities, you could cause a sudden boom that wouldn't have happened otherwise. But like Dr. Bailey said, they're not traveling very far. They're not strong flyers, so they're going to stay relatively in the area where you've put them, especially if you're providing the food for them. They're not stupid. They're going to stay close to where they can lay their eggs for the next generation. So like that picture I showed with the chicken feeder, the automatic feeder, that lady, um, when she had posted that photo, it had been several years that she'd been doing it, and she said she ordered the larvae one time, and she hasn't had to redo it, and she hasn't had any issues. In fact, she mentioned that she noticed by doing so, the numbers of house flies that she would often be plagued with around her chicken coop had gone down significantly because um, any like excess larvae that or eggs that get laid outside of that bin around in like the chicken area, the black soldier flies are going to be out competing the flies that you truly do not want to have around you. Now that being said, especially because we're a research facility and we're producing a lot of black soldier flies, we do our best to have multiple like layers of entry and exit to where we grow them so that we're not inadvertently releasing them into our environment. Because even though for now it seems like it's not a harm, we don't want to be doing it and then find out, oh, maybe we shouldn't have been doing that. And so at like the local scale, if you inoculate your compost pile with black soldier fly, though some of you said you found them already, so you can just keep doing as you're doing if that's the case, and just be more aware that they are being beneficial. Don't try to get rid of them. They're there to help you. So I wouldn't be concerned about that.
yes.
So are larvae AKA maggots?
So are larvae maggots?
Yes. So the official common word for larval flies is maggot, just like caterpillar is for butterfly. You'll notice we did not use that word because it has a negative connotation, and rightly so for these other species, like the housefly. They are gross, and they eat really gross things. So instead, we usually use the word larvae. And sometimes I'll even just, when I'm talking to my friends that don't understand insects, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, these are just baby flies," because it is. These are all just common names for that early life stage. But yes, the official word for larval flies is maggot. You're right.
Yeah, Sean.
Can you buy these larvae, AKA maggot, or the frass? Where can we?
Do you know anywhere that we could buy larvae or frass from black soldier flies?
So
Now,
yes, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, Dale, you saw them, the frass at Tractor Supply. So-
It was at Tractor Supply. Wow.
Birds, wild birds.
That's news to me. That's really cool. I'll need to look into that. But I know,
Was it frass?
No, it wasn't frass. It was larva, I think.
Oh, is it dead larva or
Yeah,
live?
Probably dehydrated. I guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
So he found dehydrated larvae at Tractor Supply for bird
Okay.
feed.
Yeah, so yeah, with the dehydrated where it's like ready as feed, yes, I've seen that in places such as there, or even sometimes Amazon will carry things like that too. The frass sometimes that so of the big four I mentioned, I'd say frass is the newer kid on the block. So there aren't as many suppliers for frass, but that is increasing. I wouldn't be surprised if Tractor Supply is already selling the larvae, it would be crazy for them to not also start selling the frass once it's more recognized as a potential fertilizer. Um, with when I went to the oh yeah, Pooja just found it for sale on Amazon. I went last year I went to a reptile and aquarium show in Houston, and on both sides they had it separate for reptiles and aquarium. You had to have two separate tickets, of course. They nickel and dime you these days, but both sides were selling black soldier fly larvae live in different sizes. And honestly, like once you see that you can get them naturally and start growing them, you'll realize that you're probably better off with your situation if you want them to just attract them naturally. It's way cheaper. Some of these people, because it's this new budding enterprise, people are doing just like Tesla did at first, where these first models are very expensive for no reason. So you can, yes, I've seen, and so Tractor Supply, that's amazing. So it's really spreading that you can start buying the flies. And like I said, the frass is not far behind.
Sean, if mine show back up again this summer, which they have the last 3 summers, you can come over with a bucket and come get a bucket.
Yeah. Back to true like neighborhood bartering and sharing. That's the way to do it.
All right. Any other questions?
What about predators other than human beings and chickens? Do they have predators?
Do they have any natural predators?
I think so. Part of what Dr. Bailey said, they really don't have any defenses other than making you think that they're dangerous. So, if like once your chickens realize, oh, this is no issue, and especially they're eating the larval form, which is their defense is by being like deep into substrate. It's only during that last phase, and because artificially they were in a container, they're trying to leave the substrate to go to better soils, usually drier soils, to pupate. So that's that wandering phase is probably when they're most vulnerable. But their main strategy is just they lay a ton of eggs, similar to like with the sea turtle strategy. Most of them are not going to make it to the adult, but because there were so many to start with, they beat the predators by letting their brother be the one to get eaten, and now they get to survive. So power of numbers for sure.
Where do they lay their eggs? Like what type of substrate or structure are the eggs being laid in the soil, or are they in the on the wall, or where's the eggs being laid?
Yes, so they will choose like crevices, so they're not going to leave the eggs exposed if they can prevent it. But also like so our situation is strange or atypical because we have so many in such a small area that they start realizing, hey, there's already 80 ladies right here laying their eggs at the prime spot, but I'm ready to lay also. So they'll lay anywhere near where that source of feed is. But only because we have that like purposely overcrowding for research purposes, will we find them laying on strange places. But yeah, they're gonna go to the substrate. They don't want their larvae to have to travel too far. And they're gonna be laying on or very close near, and usually in a more covered area, for the eggs. So likely, you'll probably never see the eggs. You'll never see the neonates because even with that picture I took of the freshly hatched eggs, that's just on like a white paper towel, and I zoomed in really far and had really good lighting, and even then it was hard to get a good focus on them. So you won't start seeing them until the larvae have already been there for many days to a week, and then they'll start gaining in that size, and then you can start noticing them.
So if they don't really fly, where are yours coming from? Do they like overwinter in some
Can you get this one,
form?
Dr.
I don't
Bailey?
know. They just show up in my compost every year.
Yeah, so they definitely do fly. Like they definitely can fly, and they definitely do fly. They're just honestly pretty wimpy at it. So they don't travel that far. Many flies can travel, hard to estimate, but probably like 9 miles, like finding like a food source. For many flies, most of them are either a parasite or a decomposer. So a termite to parasitize, or a cow, or carrion of some sort, or decomposing plant matter usually isn't like 9 miles away. But yeah, like over time, like they will like travel pretty far, like as they continue to have their generations. So it is possible for them to travel from quite a ways away. Not quite as far as fast as blowflies, which again about 9 miles like per generation we think. But that they will show up there eventually. Like we said, they're native to Texas. They are a really awesome part of the Texas ecosystem, as well as many other parts of the country. So they have been here for a long time, and sometimes they're just in really small numbers, or perhaps not close enough to human settlements to really notice them until they find the perfect opportunity to lay some eggs.
Any other questions? Well, Dr. Bailey and James and Pooja, thank you so much for your presentation. This has been so interesting, and I'm hopeful that we can add all these practices into our gardening and improve our environment with that. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
You.